Hello everyone and welcome in this very first instructional video on the gerund. In this first video we will focus on chapter 26, which is about verbs plus ing form, and that is exactly what the gerund is, an ing form that doesn't function as a verb. I added some extra information here, and what I wrote is the gerund is basically the ing form of a verb, but it doesn't function as a verb in a sentence. It can be a subject or a direct object. Okay, so we have an example of that over here, and here you can see how this ing form without to be can serve as a subject, right? Swimming is good for you. What is good for you? Swimming. Or as a direct object. I like traveling. What do I like? I like traveling. Okay, so remember that this might look like a verb, but it doesn't function as a verb in the sentence. The second and the third paragraph here are about the Dutch alternatives to the gerund, and I will not go into this, but you need to read this to do the last exercise that we will discuss in a bit. Okay, the most important information is definitely this paragraph. Here you get all the verbs that usually precede a gerund, of which some also can be followed by a to infinitive. Okay, and that's what you get here. Na de werkwoorden met de asterix kan ik in deze betekenis ook een infinitief met to volgen. Okay, so, but more importantly, these are the verbs that will usually precede a gerund. This is also quite important. Na would like, would love, would prefer, would hate volgt altijd een infinitief met to. So this means that we never use a gerund when there is would like, would love, would prefer, and would hate. And you get an example sentence here. I would like to ask a question, and you can see that this is not a gerund, but a to infinitive. Okay, that's how it works. Then also read this, of course. Na veel andere werkwoorden volgt net als in het Nederlands een infinitief. Bijvoorbeeld decide, hope, learn, plan, want, offer, promise, afford, and manage. Okay. And then when you have a look at this short summary, then you can see that it's actually quite easy what you have to know here. The gerund, that's this ing form that we've talked about, na bepaalde werkwoorden, vooral werkwoorden die voorkeur of afkeur of beginnen, doorgaan en ophouden uitdrukken. Okay. That's essentially it. That might seem easy, but the hard part about it is, of course, that you would have to study these words, at least if you don't have the gut feeling for it, to be able to use this gerund correctly. Okay, let's have a look at a few of these exercises. So I will only do one or two together with you guys, and then the idea is, of course, that you will do the rest. Let's have a look at one here. This says, I suggest to meet at 6 o'clock, or I suggest meeting at 6 o'clock, and now we have to choose the correct option. I highlighted these verbs because in this way it is actually pretty easy to just check whether this verb is in the list, and we see that it is, so we already know that we're going to use a gerund here. That means the ing form without to be, and then we can see that be is the correct option here. Okay, let's have a look at 2. Here it's similar. So the sentences are, could you imagine to live in the USA, or could you imagine living in the USA? Now I guess that some of you already have the gut feeling that B will be correct, and if you thought this, then you are well, correct. And imagine is, of course, one of the verbs that you could find in the list over here. Good. So that's what you have to do in A. Choose the correct option. Then let's go to B. Here the exercise is use the gerund. Okay, so we know that we have to use an ing form. Just to be sure, I highlighted the verbs again, but we know that these are in the list because we have to use the gerund in this exercise. So Paul said he didn't mind, and then this becomes going to the theater, right? You can see it here. And the same goes for 2. Joe said, I stole the bike, and this means that this becomes Joe admitted stealing the bike. Good. Of course, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And in C, we have to choose whether we're going to use the gerund or the infinitive. So that means that if these words are in the list, then we probably have to use a gerund, and if not, we are going to use this infinitive. Okay. What have you decided? Okay, let's check whether decide is in the list. And we see that it's not. So you have to use an infinitive here. What have you decided to do about your job? Okay, that's the first one. And then I'm going to carry on. Guys, you can look this up yourself, but carry on is indeed in the list. So we're going to use a gerund here. I'm going to carry on working here at the moment. Of course, I'd like. Okay, let's have a look here. Like, is that in the list? Yes, it is. But this is going to be a little bit confusing because for the attentive pupils among you, you'll probably notice that we have I would like over here. So this is an exception. This means that you can never use a gerund. So we're going to have to use the infinitive. I'd like to have more money, but I haven't managed, and this is a word that is not in the list, to speak to the boss yet. Okay, good. So try this for the rest of the conversation. En dan translation exercise. So ik stel voor dat we het bedrijf een brief schrijven. Here it is important that you know the correct verb, of course. Voorstellen is suggest in English. So this becomes something like, and it depends a little on how you're going to translate, but I suggest writing a letter to the company. This could also be, for instance, I suggest writing the company a letter or something like that. Okay, and then aangeboden is in English offered, right, or offered in this case. And let's have a look whether this is in the list or not. And we will see that it's not in the list, so we're going to use an infinitive here. My neighbor offered to repair my car. Okay, that's it.